There
And
you
we'll.
go.
Hello, Ruby. How are you?
I'm doing great, Ivan. How are you doing?
Not too bad. It's been a while. It's been a
It
while. We had a bit
has.
of a break. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What's new in your world?
Oh Lord. You know,
Yeah.
any
Hmm.
day. It's not boring in the life of Ruby, but
Yeah.
glad that Gracie, my uh, miniature schnauzer, who was recently diagnosed with pancreatitis, is doing much better. Not 100% yet, but um, much more herself than she was, a week and a half or so ago. But and we've been getting tons of rain here. Just today, I saved another. Well, this time it was a toad from being devoured by my terrier army. It is so wet. We're in flood warnings and stuff now. Not where I live,
Wow.
not the structure that I'm at. We're not at risk. We're pretty elevated, but we are next to the Missouri River, which, runs down, a major part of the United States. And so
Hmm.
communities that have property nearer to the river's edge or the levees might be more at risk and supposed to have more rain today and tomorrow. So leads to a lot more frog and toad life in the neighborhood than we've had for a couple of years with our droughts. And so I'm now having to be vigilant because they really like our soggy backyard at the base of a hill where an entire housing development's runoff ends up, accumulating. And I wouldn't be so worried if when they were pups, one of my dachshunds hadn't, just like Grogu from The Mandalorian,
Yeah.
the little baby Yoda that likes to eat.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Absolutely. He was staring at me. I could see the frog belly and back legs, belly up in his mouth. And we were staring at each other. And I thought there might still be a chance. The legs weren't moving. And this would have been, 3 years ago, maybe more. And I went for him. And he just slurped the entire thing and swallowed.
Oh.
So no, and apparently, and I don't remember him having any gastrointestinal issues after that. That was my Mad Mardigan, Natty.
Yeah.
So no,
Uh,
how it can go down. I try to defend the amphibian life, and this guy was a whopper, but we got him out.
oh boy.
Got him
Oh
out of the
boy.
yard. The dogs didn't notice him before I was able to cover him with the lid of a fire pit. So the poor
Hmm.
frog, confused by his imprisonment until I could figure out the solution. But yeah, now every morning, first thing, if I hadn't gone out with them as part of my routine in the morning and he hadn't moved, I would never have known. And they are not my brightest bulbs. And they perhaps would not. But if he made one stray move, if he had twitched and they were nearby, it might have been lights out for Mr. Toad.
Intense. Intense.
I
Well.
know the drama, the level of drama with everything going on in the world, the tale of life and death in the backyard of Ruby's house is, top of the headlines.
Will is saying that Toad Rescue 1-on-1. So that is a perfect way to start this stream. And yeah, hey Will, how are you doing? A couple of people are watching us, and hey guys, we missed
Thanks
you.
for joining us.
Um, and yeah, hopefully your dog is going to be and your frog is going to be okay. So it's it's
I just imagine,
yeah
where does he go and tell like his froggy buddies? He didn't fight me a lot when I finally got him in the bucket and I was taking him out. I'm like, has this frog been through this before? Or sorry, Toad. And I thought, well, chances are low. What does he think is happening right now? Because, and then I let him go, and then just like the last one that I did from inside the house that I thought was dead that wasn't dead. Yeah, all
yeah.
the legacy of the first one is on Blue Sky. But oh yeah, this is because this time I didn't scream, I didn't yell at the dogs that it was their fault. It wasn't inside. A lot there
Yeah.
wasn't toad poop, so this was a very different journey. But it might be a theme for the summer.
It definitely might be. And interesting thing that you're saying that you guys are in sort of flood warnings and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Here in New Zealand, we had a a bunch of flash floods around the rivers, and there was
Oh
very
wow.
wild weather. So yeah, people were, I think, evacuated up north somewhere, and yeah, it's
Mm,
also very rainy. But now we get consistent negative temperatures overnight, so it's turning into proper winter.
mhm.
Uh, yeah, snow making up the mountain behind me, so ski season is just around the corner.
You gonna do that? Do some skiing?
Look, I will try. I will tell you the tale now. Actually, we
I
can
was
move
gonna say I
into like
love
'cause
how hesitant that this answer is because it makes me think that maybe you're going into some self-preservation, as opposed to what Ivan's free spirit would do. No consequences, YOLO. You know.
no, I'm not quite a YOLO person. Trying to be a bit more responsible, but so I told you that I played a game of football the other,
Yes, but I
well,
don't
couple of weeks
tell
ago.
the
So
listeners.
yeah, well, I was supposed to only play like 10, 15 minutes, but
Oh no,
it
Ivan.
just so happened I pretty much played the entire game.
Ivan. Which I mean, like
Uh,
your fitness level is such that that's not my concern, but maybe not everyone knows how cobbled together your body is with all of the athletic endeavors you've had throughout the course of your life. And to be clear, folks, this was not walking football, which I pitched hard and he like really sniffed at as being beneath him. Though, walking football has
yeah,
tremendous merit.
it was just one of the local like regional leagues, so nothing too
Mhm.
crazy. We lost the game, and
Oh.
yeah, it's we played against a very good team,
Mhm.
and the way the game went, there was no chance pretty much. But I can tell you that um, I played I played a couple of more games after, but only like maybe 15, 20 minutes at a time.
Super
And I
sub.
can tell you that, yeah, kind of. I feel like after the spinal fusion and the entire recovery process. So the surgeon that I spoke to, he said that orthopedically, bone-wise, the fusion went okay. It's
Okay.
stable. We had the latest scans done, so the spine is stable. The bone
Awesome.
grew through the implants well. There are residual pains like around my back, up and down. That's everybody's different like that, but
Mm.
it's normal. And he said just sort of get back to your normal life. Like the only thing you can do right now is just go and do things that you used to do, but like do them in a sensible manner. And
Mm.
After playing these few games and experiencing what it's like to get on the pitch and use my lower body again in the way that I used to, in a nutshell, I feel like I got somebody else's lower body. That's what it
Ah.
feels like.
Mm.
Um, my fine like motor skills, like touch, the um, even the way I strike the ball, um, even the stride itself,
Mhm.
everything feels. It feels like, well, first of all, mm, the level, like my competency just dropped times I don't know how many, and
Mhm.
it honestly feels like they implanted somebody else's legs on me, because when they cut through your spine,
Mhm.
like it affects your spinal column, so all the nerves and neurological connections that run through your spine to your legs. So
Mhm.
everything feels like I'm like a second behind. So
Ah.
I almost like physically feel like the signal goes from my brain into my muscles, and I can almost like feel it running, like finding the way. It's so weird and it's very upsetting. And yeah,
I'm sure.
I feel like I'm a complete disaster. And but the only way to get better is just keep doing it and build those new
Yeah.
pathways.
Mhm.
So I really feel for, like talk. I was actually thinking about Mullen the other days. After
Mhm.
his surgery, I don't think he had a full-on spinal fusion, but still, it would have
Right.
affected his. So yeah, it's not a joke. Like you feel like you have a new pair of legs on you, and
Yep.
they just don't work right. Like your body, your brain knows what needs to be done, but your legs are just lagging behind, and
Well,
all of a
and
sudden
just
you,
to have that
yeah.
comparison, of it almost sounds like you said, teaching the new pathways or relearning
Mm,
things that your brain already knows how to do, that your brain remembers how it felt, almost like you're grasping at it and it's just out of your reach. And I've had, not necessarily quite in the same situation, I've had some experiences where either it was mentally or you know physically, having an activity that I was so proficient at, that without anything quite as catastrophic as the process you went through and disruptive, but the it hurt. Like I was embarrassed and ashamed, even though there weren't expectations of me to be as good as I used to be. These people
mm.
didn't know how good I was at this task. I knew, and I had been proud at how good I was at the task. And so hearing you speak about this, though, for you and the level of sportsmanship and athleticism that you've achieved are certainly not something within my sphere. I can very much relate to how devastating it is to be confronted, because it wasn't your fault. This was not something that laziness or, something, and you had worked so hard. You invested years of your life that developed those instincts that you didn't even have to, like previously, it wouldn't have gone all the way up to your brain. It would have just gone to the spinal column and your body would have done it. I'm so sorry that you've had that discovery, but you've sounds like you recognize it and can make decisions from there. But I get it. That is a blow when you discover something unexpected like that.
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, it's not like it completely sort of ruined my day or something, but
Oh,
it was a very vivid. I didn't expect it to be so palpable. Like I could like I was like, okay, I'm probably I'm obviously not going to be fit. I will
yeah,
be a bit
rusty.
rusty, but
Yeah.
yeah, but this was like next level. Like, and I
Who am
remember even.
I?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, whose legs are these? Like, what is going on? Like, this is not my legs. So yeah, this is not
Yep.
my feet.
Like I'm
Yeah,
telling
that's
you guys.
exact.
I'm telling you.
No, they didn't even say anything, and they were like, no, you're doing good. I was like, no, like
You don't understand
this
how
is
good
not
I
me.
could be.
Yeah, this is not me. Like, no,
Yeah,
I wasn't even trying
exactly.
to go like, hey guys, like I literally said like these are not my legs. Like there is something
Mhm.
going on, and they kind of laughed. But one of the guys there, he's got sports and science degree, so he was like,
Oh.
yeah, like I can understand.
So it's something
But
he's aware
yeah,
of being a common occurrence.
yeah, yeah. No, he's a goalkeeper, and yeah, he was like,
See,
yeah,
that was going to be
yeah.
my next thing. Maybe that's your future now.
What
If the
goalie?
top half
No,
is more familiar,
no, no, no. Thank you.
it's
No,
not that
there's one
bad yet.
position. Yeah, no, not that bad yet. No, it's but look at also getting older is not like it
Oh,
doesn't add
right.
any
Fair, man.
advantages. Yeah, yeah, no, but looks like I am talking to a very famous person right now.
Okay.
You're in the same sentence with Taylor Swift. You're in the
Oh,
U.S.
which is
magazine.
apparently the problem. And I thought someone on I can't remember who it was now on Blue Sky was had made a comment after I woke up to these messages that I had my name mentioned by the renowned Mark Griffiths on the latest episode
Uh-huh.
of Welcome to Wrexham,
Uh-huh.
during some commentary during the match. As folks probably know, the hashtag Ask Wrexham community is very
Hmm.
active during this season, where Mark Griffiths and the commentary team field questions and comments to engage virtually with viewers as they stream the match. And
Mm.
when whoever it was posted on Blue Sky, I woke up to all these messages letting me know, because I hadn't seen the episode yet. She had said something like, "Oh, I forget which is something about the name dropping. It was going to
Yeah,
blow up and all that." And I thought, and I laughed and I said, "Ha ha ha," because I thought she meant me, not out of vanity, but I thought she was just making a joke. They're like, "Ooh,
yeah,
they said ruby slippers and it'll be everywhere,"
yeah,
and I forgot that probably Taylor Swift would have been the bigger hook there. I'd kind of forgotten about the drama, you
No,
know.
no, no
And
way.
so the next thing she does is show me a link from Us Magazine where my
Uh huh.
name was incorrectly printed, with the quotation from Mark,
Yeah.
and I went, oh wow, yeah, people are making clickbait, trying to make something out of nothing. With the Taylor Swift reference was completely Mark's. You know, I had said something along the lines of, shake it off, and we get, but Mark
Yeah.
knows I'm from Kansas, and at
Yeah.
that time the Super Bowl was up. Travis Kelsey, Taylor Swift, Blake Live, like
Uh
they were being
huh.
seen together. So I think he made that little addition to my
Uh huh.
post, and now I'm in Us Magazine.
Sorry, I thought it was U.S. magazine. It's Us
Oh
magazine.
no,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's called Us.
Uh huh.
And our version of it here in the States is a kind of like a, not exactly a tabloid, maybe it is, but it's kind of a society, kind of a gossipy, kind of not hard news, more
Hmm.
entertainment,
Hmm.
kind of coverage and things like that. So, but maybe that was the UK version. I don't know, but I clicked on it and I went, oh no, they really did make this about, and Taylor Swift was dragged in to another episode of Welcome to Wrexham, and I went, this is just nuts.
No, this is that's actually really really cool. So when you become big and famous, please don't forget about me.
Oh, right. Well,
That's
send your autograph requests to our Instagram.
yeah. Yeah, no. Look, it's really cool. I mean, that's just the power of Wrexham, I guess. That's all of a sudden, all of a sudden, your name is associated with Taylor Swift and Blake Lively and other famous people of this world. That's awesome.
All the more
Uh,
reason
on
to
that
use.
on that note, unfortunately, I will not be going to Wellington to see the team play
Oh no!
because
Why?
because the date is right in the middle of my practical um, skipper's course part of the course.
Ah,
So I can't go anywhere. So
what a
Murphy's Law
bummer.
at its finest. Yeah, yeah. I mean, but look, it is what it is.
Well,
And
I mean, do you think you'll be able to stream it? I haven't looked into what the viewing options are, but I would imagine, given, you know, the tour last summer and things like that, that there might be an option to have an online,
yeah, I'll probably have
viewing.
it. Yeah, I probably will be able to watch it. Yeah, yeah. Maybe I'll do a watch along. I'll see.
Did you find out about the hat? Is the skipper's cap part of the course?
Not yet. We'll keep it a secret. We'll talk about it later.
Okay. Yes. Oh, you wouldn't do
I'll,
that
I'll,
if the answer
I'll,
was no.
I'll just show up. Yeah,
I gotta write a letter to whoever owns the rights of the Gilligan's Island, theme song, because maybe
I'll
that
have
should
a
be the
I'll have a
intro
pipe
for
and a hat. Yeah.
Iwards and Upwards. Oh my God,
Yeah.
Skipper Ivan! I can't wait. I can't wait.
Yeah.
Sometimes the universe hands you a big fat W on a plate. Mm.
Yeah. Mm. It, yeah. I don't think like I don't want to really talk about. I'm not sure if you wanted to talk about transfers. Like all that because
I
there is
don't have
nothing to
anything to
talk about
contribute.
really.
I've been doing tiny dog stuff for hours on hours, days and days on end, so I'm very much out of the loop.
Well, and then again, there is nothing going on, and I really don't. I'm not into talking about something that's like I see so many posts and podcasts and whatnot nowadays. They all talk about, what if we sign this player? What if that? What if this? And um, I I can't talk about imaginary things. Like I just, it's it's such a waste of time. Like I have so much going on in my life and
I'm
following all
sure.
that. I, I mean, some guy on Twitter or somewhere else who's like transfer guru 47 or whatever, and now we're gonna sign this guy and that guy and your mother's Baba and everybody else and until somebody is actually holding the shirt and signing the dotted line, I don't want to know about it. I don't want to waste my time on it. I might as well talk about who's going to win Gandalf or Batman. Like that's the same level of conversation.
which is
Is Santa
very
Claus?
sensible. And I academically understand that perspective. It wasn't until 2 seasons ago that I
Mm,
realized I had an appetite. Not that I really engage, but transfer windows feed some part of my soul that I didn't know existed. So you see the memes of if it's a Kermit the Frog eating popcorn or whatever, the drama of it. I absolutely
yeah,
love it. It is completely nonsensical. Sometimes there might be merit to the source or the rumors, but just the energy with which these speculation spirals manifest, I find so intriguing. So yeah,
yeah.
well,
No,
I don't have the legs to participate in it, but you're right. It is kind of a waste of time in a really technical sense because until the dotted line is signed, we all know from the full moon uh, shot from a couple years ago, like yeah, it's not done till it's done, and
I honestly,
I
I have
still
so
love
much
the
going on in
sense.
my real life,
Me
like
too,
so many
but I'm
things
glad it's
happening.
still
So
happening
yeah,
somewhere.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Look,
So no, we don't have to
but
talk about transfers, but I'm
no,
glad some
let's
people
not.
are.
Yeah, yeah. You can you do you, but yeah, this is not
Oh,
the place for
100%.
that. Like I
100%.
got even honestly, I got nothing to say. Like
Especially since I
as
have no idea who any of these people are. Like, no idea.
I
None.
don't care. I don't care about rumors. All I know is that doesn't matter who we sign. The goal for next season is to survive and stay up.
Hmm? Stay up.
We all know that the football that we're gonna play is gonna be absolute dog shit. Like it's gonna be absolutely horrible. But besides that point, I'm not gonna be critical of the style of the ways. All we need to do is to survive the year, do as good as we can, and then in the off season do the do the changes, reconstitute, like do all this. But just go through the year without firing a coach, comfortably survive. That's it. That's all we can ask for, and that's in the championship. That's all right. That's all right. We like I'm
All right.
very realistic with the expectations, kind of a thing.
100%.
Yeah, yeah,
So instead of
yeah.
transfers, what would you like to talk about next?
How Ukraine just changed the face of the modern warfare. And I just wanted
Yeah.
to say that this is absolutely mind blowing. Like I've been doing a lot of research about the drone attacks that they performed on Russian strategic air force assets, and it's
Hmm.
absolutely mind blowing. So you know, it's every major conflict there is a battle or there is an episode when you can just again you can feel the history and the progress moving in the real life right before your eyes, and that was one of those operations, the spider web.
Hugely significant moment.
It's yeah. So Putin and Russians throughout their history of the nuclear age, they were always proud of what they call the triade. So a triade, nuclear triade, is the ability to deliver nuclear payload via missiles. The ground-based missiles, they usually are based in the well, what are they called? The shafts
Hmm.
underground. Nuclear submarines,
Hmm.
missile carriers, and the strategic nuclear bombers. So the
Hmm.
Tu-95, and there was a couple of more Tu-22, and there was a couple of prototypes. So they just with a bunch of drones, average worth of a drone is about $500. They destroyed one third of a strategic nuclear carrier air fleet worth. You cannot put monetary value to that. That is just you cannot measure that in money, in dollar signs.
Hmm.
So absolutely mind blowing. And I hope that there will be more to come. There will be more to come. I'm just immensely proud of the Ukrainian ingenuity and the
Mhm.
Ukrainians.
You
Yeah.
know, I think what caught my attention more, and it might have just been because, of the cycle I was on with Gracie, what I was logging into was the recent bridge blow up. And, maybe from, my side here and, other things that I had heard, I found that very, I don't know if it's encouraging, very just, I was very
Mm,
proud for them to have accomplished that, having a little bit of an idea of what might have got, how much planning might have gone in and how much time to pull that off successfully.
mhm,
Um, is such a commitment in the middle of so many other demands and distractions in that kind of an environment. So while I remember the headlines regarding the planes, I was able to spend a little bit more time looking at the bridge. And when I just think about the arc of the years, the past years, and where we're at, and how under equipped and undermanned Ukraine is, that yes, there is some support that maybe doesn't get a lot of acknowledgement or certainly official acknowledgement or whatnot, but that they're still able to pull these things off, that there
mhm,
are entities that see the cause as worth investing on their own time or their own money, not necessarily governments or but individual people with skill sets or people with assets, you know not enough but enough in the, I guess, precision of a need to make these kinds of things happen. And they should be very, very proud because it is an uphill freaking battle. When you talk about resources, influence, all the rest. And so you have every reason to be very proud of their accomplishments. And it is so impressive given what they have to work with. And yes, hopefully, because I mean, we know, I don't even know if Russian state media would touch it. Or how do you explain
they
that away? That bridge was never there. Like,
yeah,
they're
yeah, yeah,
neutral.
yeah, yeah.
There was
It's
no bridge. What are you
literally,
talking
it's big blow to their
about?
national pride, so to speak. Um, uh, Putin is apparently going absolutely bananas. The the fact that the operation, apparently, from what we know, has been in preparation stages for just under 2 years, and there is a lot more that's going to be happening, which was part of that operation. We just don't know what other strikes are going to be carried out and what other little and big things are planned. Apparently, like I did a bit of a research, the actual model of that strike out of a container carried by a truck was actually taken from um, Russian doctrine. Well, it wasn't really the doctrine, but they had an idea of invading Eastern Europe through the same principles. So back in the beginning of 2000s, um, they had a development going on where they were actually working on these tactics when they would infiltrate Eastern Europe with trucks, and then instead of drones, they would have mini missiles and mortars and other methods of delivering damage to the um, air force bases of NATO. So,
Mm-hmm.
from what I understand, they did use that same concept,
Oh
which is
my God,
pretty
the
which
salt
is
in the
pretty cool.
wound. Yes, it is.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
yes,
yeah. I
how
think
much more embarrassing if you were going to even acknowledge it, but how much more humiliating for whomever might have any sense of military history within, the Russian military hierarchy to have been got with your own plan. Like, ooh,
well, but that's
not
the
enough
so
was
that
done to prevent that.
the best the best way the best um, method of bringing Russia down is using its corruption against it.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that Russia is absolutely corrupted through the core, left and right, north and south, gives you an opportunity to have a literally a factory in the middle of Chelyabinsk, which is a major one of the major cities in Urals,
Hmm.
and they have built those trucks with those systems in Russia. So they didn't even have to go anywhere. It's just that if you play your cards right and you use the methods that Russians are susceptible to, the entire country can be destroyed from within, by doing just that.
I
So
think in addition to
answering to
corruption, it's vanity. Like the vanity, or if you subscribe to the state message of how impenetrable, of how, infallible, if you believe that, or at least put into place measures that reflect that, you're hugely vulnerable because it is a farce, it is a lie. But, even if someone, if that were true, if an entity, if it were true, you wouldn't need to harp on it so much. It would just be accepted fact, and you wouldn't have to run around with parades and loudspeakers about how, wonderful and flawless, or look over here. Don't look at that. Look over
but
here.
but the fact that the drivers of those trucks who were driving the trucks towards the location where the drones took off, they didn't even know what they were carrying. Like they were running around the trucks watching dozens of drones flying off out of the roof, trying to shoot they were throwing rocks at it, trying to, like, there was a truck next to the gas station. As it's just it's
So, in
if you
fairness, I imagine that Russia is a place, especially in transport, any kind of logistics, where it might be healthiest not to ask questions about what's in fucking boxes. You know, I mean, I guess, good on them that they thought to pick up a rock. But
it's
that's a
no
bad
it's
day.
it's
So
it's
some guys had a bad
it's
day, but
fascinating.
I wouldn't
Well,
ask.
you know, and that is a very good response to Trump when he every time he mentions that Ukraine has no cards. And then Ukraine has cards and has a lot of cards,
And they're
and
good at keeping them close to their chest, because you
yeah,
can't, if it takes 2 years to lay the groundwork on something, then that's what it takes. So yeah, just he's not his
but of
opinion is
course Russia in response to Ukrainian Ukrainian strikes are always on military targets.
Mhm.
And Russia just bombs uh,
Without
apartments
discrimination,
and
indiscriminately.
civil infrastructure. And just last night, they
Yeah.
in I think in Lutsk they killed a lot of people, and one of the targets ended up being the Ukrainian national track and field athletic team.
Oh no,
And yeah, I just watched the videos, and it's a lot of dead and injured people.
that
And
is so tragic. And I
so
wonder
they
at
had
how much, as sensitive as Russia is to its narrative that it pushes on the international stage. That's been no secret that even across sport, to younger and younger athletes, that as competitions take place, the refusal to shake hands or share podiums with their fellow um, competitors from Russia, which I completely support. And I don't think kids should have had to been put in that situation, but I imagine their families and their countrymen must be so proud of them, because you have to grow up so fast in a space where your home is being invaded, where your relatives are killed, lost, wounded, and especially if you're a boy and your time is coming up for when you could be subject to conscription. It's very real at a very young age. And if you are a child, there are very few platforms on which you can make a passionate stand for your patriotism to the cause. And I have to wonder, I mean, not that they're not indiscriminate anyway, and not that haven't been other attacks, but it's somewhere in the decision making process, the idea of getting back, with, air quotes, at sport for Ukraine's refusal to ignore. or play nice in ceremony at competitions. Um, but it's evil, it's petty, it's pathetic, every it's hideous, you know.
Um, yeah, I to me, in my eyes, and in the eyes of every normal human being, there is no question about why Ukraine reacts the way it does, why Ukrainians react the way they do. To
Oh,
be
sure.
honest, they are they are quite civil about it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
to my surprise, I start hearing a lot of the people here in New Zealand, for example, in private conversation, when they ask me where I'm from, they were like, well, it's not all about, it's not like Russia is all bad and Ukraine is all good. And I'm looking at them like, are you serious right now? So people start doubting the cause and the root cause of the war. And you look at it like, at first they appear like normal human beings with normal brains inside of their skulls. But then you they they start operating on the levels when you just look at them as like, do you understand that there is a country that's literally committing a genocide against another country? So there is a nation that wholeheartedly supports massacre and genocide of another nation. What are you talking about? This is good and this is bad. Of course there is good and bad people in every country. This is not what we're talking about.
Right.
But the fundamental misunderstanding or susceptibility to propaganda, wherever that comes from, they start talking about justification for Russian invasion and complexity of geopolitical layout of Eastern Europe. And uh, I,
That must be really tough for
I'm
you to.
speechless, speechless.
Well,
I'm looking at
that's
the and
ignorance you
and
can't
and,
correct. Like you can't
and
fix
some of
that
them.
with facts. That's someone who's looking to quickly resolve because there are people who aren't familiar enough with the significance of the situation and who choose not to be, who want to seem fair minded by, equating everyone, like let's all be harmonious. Somebody did something bad. Without using, it's like I don't see color, right? That doesn't solve a problem with race relations. But I find that a lot of times folks who are not willing to become uncomfortable and acknowledge facts that mean they are vulnerable or their perspectives have flaws that might end up having consequences for them. I don't know how the Commonwealth works with if the UK gets involved with something, how New Zealand would be impacted by a conflict. But folks want an overly simplistic resolution to disruption. They don't like the unknown. They don't like the uncertain. And I think this comes in with things like grief, and not just in the States, so it's prevalent here. I think in a lot of Western culture, to hurry up and get over something, to hurry up and get past something, to hurry up and resolve, a conflict that has been going on in different parts of the world, sometimes for millennia. Like, hurry up, like it's so simple. Why don't you just do this? Why don't you building blocks? A, B, C, and it shows a real lack of appreciation for the history that has led to the present. And so, yeah, I feel for you running into that down there because it would take time and energy to spend on trying to educate someone and plead a cause that should be obvious to someone who likely won't be interested or not going on their own to inform themselves because it takes time. There are resources out there. We've put some on our Instagram page that are good, objective sources to learn about this very complex history of the region, which Russia has used in relatively recent years propaganda to label as everything having been Russian, which is simply not the case. And especially with the Soviet Union, a lot of accomplishments, a lot of artists, a lot of important contributions to the world were painted with the Soviet brush. But you say Soviet, you might as well say Russian in the post-Soviet era because that's what they're claiming. And there simply have been centuries upon centuries of other influences, histories, and origins that have never made it to our mainstream books as to who, in fact, owns the rights to those accomplishments. And folks can look that up. But again, Timothy Snyder is a great place to start and go for other resources. But yeah, like good,
to all
good and
those
good and
uh,
bad
to
is
to all those people who I hear every now and then saying like, no, well, why is Russia all over? There got to be a reason. Why is Russia all of a sudden doing this to Ukraine? You know, it's not. And you look at them as like, have you ever even tried to look into the any history files or books and look at the history of the Russian Empire, whether they were read or before they were read? For thousands of years, for literally, I'm like, this is very simple actually. For thousands of years, Russia had done nothing but exactly what they're doing in Ukraine right now.
and it
And to
works
be
for them
honest,
to their
and
benefit. They have been allowed to have it be a system that has worked often enough that they can continue to go to it as a source of expansion for resources, influence, or whatever. Like they haven't been sufficiently checked through the history of time for this not to be a play. Now, of course, here in the States, we have our own revisiting of, isolationism or expansionism. I mean, if you want Canada to be the 51st state, Jesus effing Christ.
uh,
And Greenland, like, come on, man. So we are by no means, just because I'm American, do I think that we, are some shining light of integrity and valor here.
no,
But yes,
it's not about
it is
being
a
a shining
pattern
light. Or
demonstrated.
I'm not saying that one country is again all
Oh
good
yeah.
and another country is
Oh, of
all
course
bad.
not.
No, I'm just talking
Because
about
that's
very
weird stuff.
distinct very distinct ways and methods of behavior over certain
We haven't had
society. And
Western influence in on this continent long enough to even compete with the length of pattern of behavior that one could study as to how Russians have conducted themselves through millennia. And it's out there.
another another thing that I hear a lot is that, well, if Putin disappears, if he dies, if somebody shoots him, then it's all going to change. And that's another thing that I like. I'm just absolutely tired of explaining this to people. Putin did not clone himself into a millions of little Putins. He did not invade the other country physically. He did not rape thousands, kill thousands, done every possible war crime in the book. It was not Putin. They were people who gladly, willingly sign up and go and do that for money or in other reasons, mainly because they like it. The thing is with Russians is that those who end up there, both men and women, they like doing that. They enjoy it. As a society, they very much love that. That is what they do. They are
Well, if it's
poorly educated.
celebrated, then besides
They
just joy, you get, benefits, very real, tangible benefits within your society when those kinds of actions are celebrated. Yeah,
and
100%. So I think we talked before. If you're already poor, God, this was years and years ago. I remember a story about, Russian soldiers who were actively on, the roster, active duty soldiers who were starving because they weren't actually being paid, and how it was a crime, but they might sell some of their uniform or something like to get some money. So when you have a population, this is not an excuse at all, and this is not to be a blanket for all Russians, because some are obviously very well to do, but when you have a history where you have generations of people who have not known anything but the only avenue to security, the only avenue to opportunity for themselves and their family is through social mobility. And even in our country, in America, it has been very true as well. The military has been a recognized vehicle for which to improve your station in life. Now, the means that you go about it, like looting
You
isn't allowed in
Y-
every army
yeah,
and
the
whatnot.
we have to put a very solid distinction to, because military is one thing. Military is, I am a ex-military myself, and
Hmm.
British culture of military, American culture of military, French, Spanish.
Yes.
Um, it's We need to understand that what we have in the background before we start talking about military and everything, we have a mentality of the nation. The average mentality of an average Russian, which are millions, is a mix of submissive slave like mentality multiplied by a mentality of a criminal or
Hmm.
or an inmate. So you have a hybrid of a slave and a prisoner,
Hmm.
which mixes together, because historically Russians were slaves, all of them inside their own country,
Hmm.
which was only on paper canceled in 1861. It used to be called the chain right. So um, Russian lords or other
Hmm.
people of high class would trade people within the country, would trade slaves, buy and sell their own Russian people. And then the only way out of that was to run away and become a essentially an outlaw
Hmm.
and live outside of that society where one is a lord, master, and another one is a slave, is to go out on the roads and start pillaging and robbing. So, and then eventually, the within the Russian society, the picture and the dominance of a what's called a thief or thief in law became so huge that it's a national hero. A criminal, a thief in law in Russia is a national hero.
Like a
And
yeah, darker
it's like
version of Robin Hood.
it's like a fucked up Robin Hood.
Hmm.
Okay, so and that is deeply ingrained, and people even use the words and the lexicology and the slang of uh, prison like criminal world slang from the time they are in childcare centers, if there
Hmm.
is any. So from the first steps they make, from the first words they say, all the way up to highest level of politicians and university professors. I have witnessed it with my own eyes. They all use that slang. They all use those words.
And
So
language matters.
you have a hybrid of a person who is never going to rebel, who is a literally a slave at heart, who doesn't have their own opinion, who is very susceptible to propaganda of any sort. At the same time, they're ready to commit a crime. Doesn't matter what. And the only people in Russia historically who were really well to do were criminals.
Oh
They
yeah.
would be breaking, like, even look at the oligarchs, look at the rich people of the last 20, 30, 40 years, all of them. Not, you are not making good money in Russia if you're honest.
Which
Period.
I would put to when we talk about the value of words, the slang and how it affects generationally or through the different classes, as a mindset. I would offer up maybe the term values. What a society values and how that shapes it, or it shapes that society. And when you have, again, generations upon generations for whom these are reality, this is what is worthwhile. This is what will make your life better. This is what will make you have more power than you do now. These are the avenues available. There are no other avenues, because within a controlled state, how you get to a piece of the finite pie that the oligarchs share is super, super monitored. And again, this is not an excuse, but I think it explains some of the motivation besides innate, as you're saying, genetic predisposition, which I think can also be shaped generationally. Um,
Absolutely. Like
is
dogs.
the
Dogs
reward.
are bred in a certain way. Yeah, same thing. Humans are bred just like dogs are. So if you're because natural selection kicks in. People who don't fit that box, they die out.
Well, I was going
And
to
you
say,
only
well, they don't just die out. They might be
they,
hastened on their way out of the gene pool, through a window, off a roof,
yep,
blown up
yep.
car, depending on
And
how much you are worth it. And those are just the ones we hear about internationally that are dramatic enough, being poisoned. in another country or things like that. On a lower level, I have to assume the levels of violence that I tend to hear more about being in the States because of some of the issues with the cartels in Mexico, for example. That same level of extermination has to be a part of everyday life in Russia. As maybe you don't use the term gangs, I'm sorry, but you have individuals who have an eye on a prize, and there's competition for that prize. And a very accepted way of removing competition is, killing people. So the fact that we aren't hearing about it every day out of Russia, at least I'm not, doesn't mean that it's not happening, because it would only make sense in the pyramid all the way up to the one person, which again, back to when you were speaking about if Putin were to disappear, everything would
Uh,
change. Of course not, because that pyramid wasn't built by Putin.
you
The
literally
pyramid still stands.
you just said that, and going back to what I started with, you take Putin away from
Mm-hmm.
that structure right now, there will be another Putin there. Not even tomorrow, in a minute. But the only thing, it's going to be even worse. So this is not going to get better. It's going to get worse. And um,
You
you
think from a
also have
standpoint of
now,
competing with erasing Putin's legacy and establishing their own, this
yeah,
successor?
yeah,
Oh God.
and aggression towards other countries around them. Because what we have now is that Russia has an imperialistic pride. They still have that. Every person who lives there, who looks like an absolute swine, a fucking hobo under the bridge,
It
you
has been
talk to
wholly
them,
romanticized, this
and they're like,
imperialistic.
Russia, like you look at them like you are just a disgusting piece of crap. You never done anything worthy in your life, and they are proud of Russia. And you have young generations growing up in that wild crimson patriotic state where they're ready to go and kill their neighbors and other countries on, like, en masse. And if you now remove Putin and stop the war, if you stop that outlet of hatred and desire to kill for them, can you imagine what's going to be happening within the country, within the minds of those people who've been completely brainwashed to the point that they, basically what they understand right now is that they cannot be wrong. Whatever
Mhm.
they do, they are right, because they are the higher power. They are the superior people, the superior nation. They have the superior blood. God is with with
I would
with
say
them.
ordained by God. Were we going to bring that
Th-
in even though it's Russia?
does it remind you of anybody in particular?
Oh, oh, absolutely, a couple, and I'll be the one to bring it up. But first, I was going to say that obviously these kinds of dynamics are not unique to Russia. I think first of some of the situations that have been ever present but are receiving more attention now in the United States. And to me, these always come back to a sense of power and control. When you have underprivileged, underserved people who either don't have the means, access, or desire to improve their situation in life, because it takes work when a society isn't built to help you, right? To have a narrative that paints you as a hero without you having to do any extra work or effort, that paints you not only as a hero, let's say a martyr, you're a victim of someone else's decisions, and you are heroic because of this mythological origin story. So within white supremacy, let's say in the United States, amongst, poor socioeconomic classes, be white, obviously in this case, it is a very eagerly received message, because without having to go to school more, without having to make other sacrifices or acknowledgments or work on yourself, when we talk about awareness, growth, things like that, you have this ready-made answer, oftentimes packaged in the black and white, you know scripture of the Bible, telling you, oh no, you are number one. Everything wrong in your life is because of someone else doing this and this and this. And if you choose or don't want to dig deeper, it's really tidy for you to have a sense of importance and power over others, when in your real day-to-day life you experience very little. So yeah, I'll be the one to bring up Hitler this time, because this is
The I
more.
the ideas of fascism. Um, so fascism is actually very natural. Fascism is something that every society has to a certain extent. The word fascia means connecting tissue. So fascism,
Mm.
actually, as much as it sounds weird, fascism is not a bad thing in its core. Fascism is something that connects people together as a group of people, as a society. It's something that brings everybody together and gives that community and the society a distinct feature to connect over. So fascism itself is very natural to a human being, to any animal. It's just this is us, and we're protecting ourselves from the aliens.
And
Okay,
to be
but
fair,
when
like I remember when I first studied, yeah, government, and so I saw communism as a child of the 80s,
Mhm,
raised to
mhm.
have a certain mindset in my country. On paper, communism looked pretty good. I,
Yeah,
I could
absolutely,
see why. On
absolutely.
paper, literally in the book. I'm
The
like, this sounds great. Humans are flawed, and that's what fucks up ideas. It turns
practical realization of the concept always lets you down.
yes.
So it, so with fascism, what I'm saying is that any idiot, literal idiot with poor education and alcohol-fueled brain can understand the ideas of fascism, and that's why dictators such as Putin, Hitler, and others, they always fall down the same track because it's easy. We are
Yes.
good, they are bad. We are us, they are alien. They are worse than us. It
And it
works
gets
every
easier
time.
the more people subscribe because then you have the additional, if it's peer pressure or the additional attraction of not being seen as alien within a society, as not being seen as an outlier, as being a core, as being the very face of what your country is supposed to represent. So yeah, it's not just Russia for damn sure.
But to those people right now who say, you know, we should stop helping Ukraine, and maybe Russia actually has right to take Ukraine, and it's their country, and we're suffering too much because the economy is in the dumps. Russia will not stop. They see you as just as bad as they see the Ukrainians. So when they done with Ukraine, if unless somebody in the powers of this world grows a pair and actually smacks them back and puts them into their place, they will come for you. And they have nuclear powers, and they have everything. They will not stop. Especially looking at and talking to Russians right now who are in there and understanding what's in their heads right now. They if they stop the war, the country will collapse on itself because of the amount of social unrest and literal wild west kind of a scenario that's going to be happening within the country.
Well,
So
if
there
you
will
are
be.
not rallying behind a cause like that, if you are not making a machine of war, and the United States certainly has a history of capitalizing on war to solve political or economic issues, um, if you don't have that to distract or give purpose to the deaths, to the sacrifices, the austerity that comes with taking on conflicts that you can't actually afford within, let's say, the Russian treasury, not necessarily the influx from the others, but the Russian treasury cannot support. You was it? You can't squeeze blood from a stone, right? If the Russian people are poor, you're not getting from the feudal times where you would have your vassals get. They don't have anything to contribute. If you don't have the distraction of this conflict and at least be able to paint the picture through state media of it being worthwhile, you know, you're going to have problems. History has shown that regularly in Russia. If they do not do enough to maintain the theater, the pageantry of the illusion of success and superiority of Russia in the world, the masses rise up. I imagine the only reason why it hasn't happened again is we're having more of a disparity in access to weaponry than you did at a time when
Ch-
farmers had.
China. China is funding Russia. Russian economy, when they talk, Russian economy is going to collapse. No, it won't. China is
If it
supporting, like
starts turning resist
it's
balance.
in their best interest. They literally have a bloodline of everything Russia needs going straight
In
into
the
Russia.
absence of that, in a
Yeah,
vacuum, then yes,
yeah.
100% I agree with your take. And so if this focal point of the last several years that has given purpose, this unifying message for Russians in their community were to disappear, then you have to immediately substitute it with something just as compelling and strong. And they don't have a lot of options because they are a very rigid and finite state as far as what
Hmm.
we've talked about: values, opportunities, mindset. So you don't suddenly get a population, if you even wanted to make them more enlightened and more, meritorious. That doesn't happen overnight. You have Pavlov's dog. These people have been conditioned to this is how life goes. And that doesn't just go away, which you also see, in China. The concepts of right and wrong can be very fluid in different cultures. Now, we can assess whether or not we find that particular corruption distasteful from our Western standards or, individual countries or as people. But what I think it boils down to a lot across the globe is not so, right and wrong is a real fucking luxury. If you're not starving, if your family isn't being attacked or subjugated in some way, you know, that's a real fucking luxury. A lot of the world and a lot of the people on this planet have to navigate survival in a completely gray area. Now, these are people who still have motivations. I believe that on some level, sure, Russian mothers have a biological, if not otherwise, affection for their offspring. It may not manifest in the same ways as we think is ideal, let's say in America. There are things that can impact that, such as substance abuse, spousal abuse, all kinds of things. You have a broken system in which people are being born. So the idea of family isn't supported in the way it could be, let's say, in, I don't know, Denmark or New Zealand, some place that has a healthier society. It's not an excuse, just contributing factors, right?
The
So go
Yeah,
ahead.
talking about Russian mothers.
Oh dear.
There is a famous saying that Marshal of the Soviet Union Zhukov said, because the Russia never counts casualties. Casualties are right now it's about 1 million
Mhm.
of killed and wounded both. Women will give birth to more. Whenever there was a high casualty operation, which is every day, he didn't care. He said they can all die. Women will be giving birth to more. That's the so when people say the casualty is going to stop them, no, it's only been about 1 million. World War One, when Russian Empire went in before it turned into a revolution, into a red revolution, they lost millions. The casualties don't matter. So for Russians, the way they, just like you said, the martyr, they see them as heroes. 9th of May, the Victory Day, so called. I remember that propaganda and the brainwashing from the very beginning. Russians have a very solid idea that they are the only country that won the World War II. They are the most important ones. You ask them why? He said because we lost God knows how many people. Apparently, the official number is around 30 million, but in fact, that's a lot more than that. And they think it's a good thing. They think that's the way they prove their worth is by dying on the battlefield. And they all heroes. And you talk to them and like, instead of celebrating this, you should be on your knees crawling around in sorrow, pitying over complete loss of any kind of skill of warfare. Because I know how this country makes those heroes. I know what a meat wave is, and we can see it right now. The first place that they were there were valleys during the World War II. There were valleys, dozens of square miles filled with dead soldiers, filled. So there was a valley before the battle had started, and now there is no valley. Now it's a plain because there is tens of feet of dead bodies sitting one on top of another in spring uniform, summer uniform, autumn uniform, winter uniform. It's layers. Then that's been happening
Because they're
everywhere. So
expendable.
the
and they had a pool
They,
deep enough at the time of former serfs to throw at that, because it certainly wasn't the son of the you know prince or the general or the czar who was going to be in that valley. It was, as it is in a lot of places, people who don't have socioeconomic access that are conscripted or in some cases kidnapped and forced into
yeah.
that uniform and to charge. But one thing I would like to bring up when you were talking about first of all, when I think about a numbers game, I do tend to think about China. Now again, you were talking about how Russia sees itself and not like an international perspective on approaches to warfare. And if historically that has been Russia's field manual, then we know they're slow to pivot.
Do you know?
And
Sorry.
they
Do you
don't
know
have
that
China's numbers.
In Russian doctrine there is no official definition or statement about anything that has to do with unacceptable casualties. There is
Oh,
no
okay.
such a there is no
No
such a
such thing.
definition of unacceptable casualties.
Okay. Well, I mean, that reflects, what could be a discussion on how does Russia value the lives of its countrymen, its citizens.
It doesn't.
But back to the role of mothers, even if mothers are celebrated as, birthing the heroes, well, and future martyrs of Russia, obviously that is a role that is very utilitarian and not celebrating the higher capacities of women to contribute to a society or a world in any way, which could cause, of course, an entire society of women to cling very closely to that role. If it's the only one that is most recognized and most hallowed in a space, if the best thing that you can be as a woman in Russia is a good Russian mom who births Russian boy soldiers who go off and die in glory, then
Exactly.
that's what you do to the best of your ability. And I don't know if everyone, who might be listening, Ivan, knows that you instinctively do and that I do from coverage, that I've talked about benefits and you've talked about, dying gloriously for Russia being something to be aspired to within Russian military. I've mentioned reward, I've mentioned benefits. I don't know that everyone is aware that there are actually, at all of these major losses that Russia suffers in recent times, let's say specifically in the war with Ukraine,
Ruby,
a batch
sorry,
of,
sorry, just to add a little bit. That concept of die gloriously for your motherland, it's not within the military. It's within
oh, sorry, right, society.
schools, childcare centers. Like that's what they do to
Gotcha.
little kids
Broader
growing up.
sense.
The military is more like it's like a criminal. It's like a gang.
Sounds
They don't follow in.
loosely constructed, or looserly,
It's
less
literally it's a
constructed
gang.
than what we
It's a
think of as
gang. No,
military.
it's not even constructed. It's a gang of outlaws. It's ruled by power. They rape one another. They piss on one another physically.
Okay.
They
So true.
torture and do all sorts of things to one another. It's not a military in Western. You guys have to understand.
Yeah, that
When
sounds
you
more like a
see the
gang if they're just wearing the
it's a
same
gang. It's a
clothes.
gang. It's a
Okay.
gang of criminals.
All right.
The
So
only
let's
thing that
say,
separates them. Yeah.
okay, no, that's an important distinction. You're right, because I don't think about it that much, because for me, a lot of these things are synonymous because of how I've encountered them. And you're right. A military is made up, in most cases, of a country's population, right? So
Mhm.
what that population values will be reflected in that military, and some value other things. But no, that's an important distinction. Thank you for making that. But what some folks don't know, and in this case, it is military and used to celebrate that, though I understand it's more pervasive, where let's say some bodies were recovered or deaths reported to some families in Russia, and Putin would select a number of them, not anywhere near all of them, right? This is not a universal fucking death benefit. It's a lottery, and a handful of people to be poster children, mothers and whatnot, are given medals, are given a set amount of money, an actual reward that might allow them to have a better apartment or something like that, in acknowledging the death of their soldier in the conflict. But it is not everyone. Like, it is not. And so even the competition for being acknowledged, and with that public acknowledgement, the monetary stipend to compete for, or to aspire for, so that even if you die, your family could be lifted. Like, it is so fucked up. It is so psychologically fucked up and so
Yeah,
ingrained.
no,
But so yeah, we're not
in
just talking like,
in
ooh, benefits like the VA system here.
in
No,
reality,
cash.
family will get nothing most of the time. And now, getting back to
Nah,
the
it's
core of
just
it
a
all,
promise.
when people talk about why is Ukraine fighting, so many people dying, Ukraine is fighting to not be part of that, because they have been part of that for hundreds of years through
They
force.
know.
Yes, of
They
course,
know what that is.
people who were collaborating, absolutely,
Mhm.
but especially the Western Ukraine, they remember how Russians were either sending them over to Siberia or killing them in millions. Thousands of people would die every day, or the hunger of the 30th. They remember all that. That's why they hate the Russians, and they have every reason to. So Ukraine is fighting not to be the part of that. So and if you guys don't understand it, well, I the only way to probably get it is to experience something like that. And if you don't stop Russia where they are now, you will get to experience that along with
Yeah.
Chinese, and they are
Yeah.
not much better than Russians, trust me.
Yeah. Well, Ivan, we're at a minute and 10. Oh, sorry, a minute and 10. An hour and 10. I don't want
Yeah.
to break your float. Do you have some other specific topics that you would like to touch on? I know we've
No,
rolled one to another
I think
today. The sun
we
is
had
now
such a
coming
good,
through your window.
yeah. Olivia, she's got COVID. I hear her crying upstairs with
Oh
Elena. I
no.
might need to
How is
go
she
now. She had
doing?
a bit of a fever, like so not feeling the hottest, or actually very hot. But yeah, it's not.
Oh, poor thing. But
Yeah,
not
yeah.
severe.
It's not too severe. It's just like when you have that sort of flu symptoms, everything is
Oh,
achy and you can't
poor
sleep and
thing.
blocked nose, and yeah. So
Oh,
I
not fun.
go and see what I can do. But it's been a great conversation. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this, and I
Of
hope people will
course.
find it
It's good to
interesting
see you.
too.
Well, I hope certainly informative. Thank you for the opportunity and thank you for everyone in the chat who joined us. Appreciate having you.
Yes, thank you guys. Thank you very much, and hopefully we'll see you sooner rather than later.
Of course.
Yep.
Bye.
Glory to Ukraine.
Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.